Sharp Money, presented by DraftKings. Just a little different than last night. I'm Patrick Maher, Amal Shaw, Dustin Sweetelson, flanking professional sports bettor, one of the best to do it, Steve Fezzik, pregame.com. My man's been run down lately. We say hi to Fez. A lot to discuss. First off, congratulations on a great run in Circa Millions. You mentioned in your notes, faded to the top 20, which is incredible. You went 57, 32, and 1. We've got a Survivor conversation to have. We've got Wildcard Weekend to discuss, the national championship. But let's just start here. Let's start with life. You are a person that makes a living for your wife and child. The NFL is really the moneymaker. What happens when Week 18 wraps? I know you have the postseason and all that to come, but, like, is there a little bit of an exhale? Like, how do you feel right now?
Oh, I'm exhausted, so I need to take a week off, and I can't do it, obviously. But you say the NFL is the moneymaker, but what's interesting is that college basketball live is so lucrative, especially during the conference tournaments and during the March Madness, when everybody deals it. It's not so good when only one or two books deal it, but when everybody's dealing those lines, that's fantastic. There's certain things that are really good and certain things that aren't as good. Like people swear by the NBA. NBA props are great, but I got to tell you, Patrick, I have never profited much from NBA sides and totals personally. Maybe that's just a hole in my game. Maybe I just don't like the NBA enough, but it's such a hard market. Whereas the NFL is so much easier. Part of it's because, well, we'll talk about the games and bets you could have made, from the get-go. But even in these contests, I was an advocate that these contests had over 100% ROI. People made fun of me in the mid-2000s, like, you're smoking crack, Fez. There's no way you can have, like, over 100% ROI, and I started winning them. But, I mean, people don't even put in their picks. I mean, you talk about your dead money. It's I can explain, in a nutshell, everything people do wrong in these contests.
I can hear the sickness in your voice. Are you not taking care of yourself?
Of course not. I'm worn down from all this stuff.
Now, let's go to the tournaments. You said faded to top 20 in millions. We should let the audience know nationally what that means to fade to top 20, because it's a wonderful finish. And you went 57, 32, and 1. Let's start there.
Yeah, so in my home run years back 2008, 2009, I finished 28 games above 500, and I beat 300 guys. And then I finished 22 games above 500, and I won, and I beat 300 guys. And now I finished 25 above 500. How come I didn't win again? Well, because now instead of 300 guys, there's 5,000 guys. So you do the math, there's 15 more guys, so I'm going to finish 15th instead of 1st or 18th, or I haven't looked up, what my final standing was. But it's still going to be a really nice paycheck. I mean, that's good. Frankly, what saved me is, or what really made the year great, was buying in as an investor in one of the survivors. I only bought one. I didn't buy like into 10 guys, and he made it to the finish line, L.A. Jones. So I had 16% of him. So that's going to actually be the big check that I thought I was going to get from millions, I'm going to get from Survivor.
Steve, how do you get involved with somebody as a percentage on Survivor for people that may be unfamiliar with what transpired? If you can kind of take us from an outside view, kind of how you got to where you're at.
Yeah, so on Twitter, I was interacting. I caught Greg's episodes, where he expressed an interest maybe in finding some investors. And I think I'm uniquely qualified to be an investor because I told Greg, like, hey, I'll start buying some percentages from you. And I said, I can give you the money, or I can just use that to help you hedge some of your bets as we go along. So talk about, like, it's almost like a company that is like, selling shares of their company so they can expand and do what they need to do to operationally and not have a cash flow situation. So I think that worked really, really well. Gave some contest suggestions. Hey, he was steering the ship the whole way. So that's accolades to him. I will say, I believe we invented a strategy, not invented it, but the first ones to publicly do it, where we kept coming out and saying, we're taking this team. This is the team we're going to take. So translation, you would have to be a fool to take our team because we're already taking them, and it hurts both of us. Similar, I use the example, the board game Risk, when we played Risk as a child, and you start putting all your armies in Australia. Dustin, if you want to try to take Australia over from me, then we're both going to lose. So leave me the heck alone and take South America, okay?
Just a quick follow-up, Patrick, in terms of that. But if somebody else perceives it to be the best play that particular week, Why should they be concerned about what you're doing when they're looking at the big picture?
Because it's not the best play. We would never take like the 7-point favorite. We purposely didn't take the one that was mathematically optimally.
Got it.
So
okay.
there would be an example when Denver was a 6.5-point favorite. We took the Bears as a 4-point favorite. And our feeling was that, well, I mean, you could say, oh, I want to be contrarian. I want to play the Bears. But without crunching all the numbers, you'd have to be a complete Dumbo to say, oh, I already know someone else is playing the Bears. Someone else might play the Bears. As soon as you select the Bears and you know there's going to be multiple other guys, that's not the path you should take. You should take it. And ultimately, another guy took the Rams that week, and a fourth person took another path. You want diverging paths. It's like filling out a March Madness pool. The worst thing you could possibly do, imagine this, is fill out 2 duplicate pools so that your path is the same. It's like having 1 entry instead of 2.
Well, we should start here. Steve Fezzik, professional handicapper, pregame.com. We should start by saying congratulations. By my math, you're 25 games above 500. You went Johnny Chan years ago in the Super Contest back-to-back without the orange. This year, 5,000 contestants or more, and you finished top 15. So we shouldn't gloss over that. It's a great run. Total credibility. Now, my question for you would be, finishing 15 millions and then 16% investor and survivor, do you know what you're walking away with?
And I don't even know if I'm 15th. I might be 20th. I didn't go through each and every person in millions and calculate where they're at. So I could be 22nd. I could be 14th. We'll see where it lands. Maybe I'll be 18th. But the millions is clean, so you take 9.3 million. You divide by 4. You take out some fees for proxies and lawyers. And then I got 16% of that, so I will be getting a check, that would be comparable to finishing, like right around, I don't know what it is, 300,000. We'll see what it winds up being after all the fees, et cetera. Or 300, a little over 300,000, a nice chunk of change.
Congratulations, that's awesome. Contest theory do's and don'ts. You're constantly, sharpening your tools, but contest is something you've been doing for a long time and winning them. Have you learned anything along the way this year?
Every year I like to think I reinvent myself, and I feel like I'm getting smarter. And I will throw I'm 60, and I got to tell you that so many of my guys that are my age also, they are dinos. They will not adjust. They're just keep doing what they always did, no matter how wrong it is. So I fine-tuned it. But a couple of things that make sense. Submitting your picks is always a good idea. Forgetting to submit your picks, that's negative EV. That happens all the time, especially week 1. Submitting your picks early is negative EV. There's some out there still that say, well, I don't want to be clouded by the marketplace or if there's an issue. You know what? Trevor Lawrence isn't playing. That's not an issue. That's a major piece of information. You cannot put in your picks early. And a lot of people, they have a choice with their proxies where they take the early cutoff versus the late cutoff. You have to do the late cutoff. You got to have better information. You don't want to submit in the final 10 minutes, but you don't want to submit 10 hours before either.
Yeah, Patrick, I think it's a great point because when you look at the contest, some of the things along the way, the information, particularly on a Saturday that comes out, and now, Steve, you're allowed to submit it fairly late compared to what it was previously. It really helps in terms of how you might make a selection, how you choose to proceed.
And what happens if you have to catch up? What happens if you have you're only like 10 games above 500, and unexpected news pops on the game, and the game went from -6 up to -7.5, and now it drops back down to -6. So the contest line is 7, and everyone is laying 7 because they thought the line was 7.5. They've already submitted. Now you're like, bing! Now I can take the +7. I'm getting good line value, and I'm going to be oppo the vast majority of the people because 3/4 of the entrants have already submitted their picks with the information that hasn't been updated.
Have you ever made it to January 8th without getting a terrible cold from being run down during the football season?
Oh, I've made it without getting sick. I've never made it without being completely and utterly, run down. Because let's face it, I'm doing the contest. I'm betting. I'm live betting. I'm handicapping. I'm giving out plays to my clients. I mean, there's so many things. I got guys like all over the place that I'm interacting with that are in Philadelphia or they're in. I'm just Oklahoma, or they're in North Carolina, and I'm like, there are opportunities with the legalization of sports betting. That's what fried me this year. So many sports have legal sports operators that don't know what they're doing, and so there's opportunities in so many different states. By the way, I just randomly listed some states, so don't go to Oklahoma or wherever I sent you. But There's people like, I want to pick winners. So the easiest way to win, it's like poker. Find the world's worst poker players. Find the worst sports book in the world and exploit them. That's the best way to win money betting sports.
Is there one inefficient? You don't have to name the book nor the state, but is there an inefficiency that pops to mind right now on the spot?
I'll mention one that has kind of cut back a lot of the bettors. Delaware Downs has a recreational book, and they, frankly, have finally started limiting people. It wouldn't be unusual when the Eagles were good that the Eagles would be laying 8 everywhere in the world, and Delaware would have them at 10. I mean, well, why isn't there a bunch of guys flying into Delaware? Because you can't bet $10,000 on plus 10. You might be able to bet 1,000 or 1,500, but if you're there, why not stop in Delaware Downs?
For somebody that is a name and a big name in the industry and known by everybody, do you have problems getting down, Steve?
It all varies because some books are concerned. Frankly, some people just think I'm a complete bumbling fool. Like, these
That's
other
great.
They think these guys who sell picks and they're largely correct. Don't win and they have no idea what they're doing and they just welcome my action. And other books say, well, he's sharp, but that's fine. We want him to promote our sports book, and we do a fine job. Like Circa and I have a great relationship. I text Jeff Benson back and forth all the time about lines and what's going on in straddles.
He's legitimately sick, yet he still came down for us. I'm only letting him do one more segment, so we're going to kick him out. He's got to go home and rest. The guy's absolutely beat up. So here's what we'll do. We'll run through the 6 wildcard matchups and then the national championship and get you the hell out of here. Cleveland opened Houston at DraftKings. I'm going to give you those numbers. Cleveland opened 2. It has been bet up to 2.5, Steve.
Yeah, so my first take was Cleveland, but, the wild card round, strength of schedule is so important. Teams that play the tougher schedule crush against the spread. Well, Cleveland obviously played in the AFC North. Those teams are good. And anyone residing in the AFC South is playing more of an easy schedule. So because of that, I can't bet on Houston, even though it may well go to 3, and I don't trust Flacco. I think Cleveland finds a way.
Well, you just get a comment in after his, and I'll keep rolling the board with him.
Yeah, to me, Texans at home, I'm surprised they're a dog here. It just surprised me with this number.
143. That's your Saturday night game, Mr. Fezzik. Miami, maybe you want to tell us what you saw from them last night against the Bills at Kansas City. It's open 3, has been bet up to 3.5. Kansas City laying at minus 3.5.
So Kansas City is no great shakes. Their offense is lousy and their defense is very good. But Miami, whoa. I mean, I know they gave up the 92-yard punt return, but how many times was Buffalo in the red zone? And they just kept screwing it up series after series, including end of the first half. Miami got completely outplayed, and I haven't heard anyone say this. It's going to be freezing cold. Now, I know the total cratered from 46 down to 44 because of the cold weather. But how many times do we have to see teams from Miami playing in the intense cold? It's going to be like
Good
10
point.
degrees. How many times do we see the Miami Hurricanes, right? Like shivering in the Sun Bowl when it's snowing or in Yankee Stadium,
Yep.
and they never even show up. This is one of those games. Dude, don't even think about teasing Miami. They could just get their doors blasted by a KC team that really isn't all that good.
I agree with everything Steve said there, Patrick. When you look at it, I just think, and then you add the injuries that are on this defensive side of the ball, real impact for Miami.
It's a great point about the weather. A high of 16, a low of -2, so -2 in Kansas City. That is going to be, it's going to be windy as well. So good point there. Steve Fezzik, professional handicapper. We go 145. Pittsburgh's at Buffalo. So let me give you the machinations. DraftKings open Buffalo 9, bet all the way up to 10.5. Has dropped back down to 9.5, -9.5. Buffalo laying it, hosting Pittsburgh.
Boy, I would love to get a 9 so I could tease it down to 2.5 and a 6.5 point teaser. Me and the entire world, I think. Regarding the weather, I'm old enough. The Bengals had some fine teams under Kenny Anderson in the 80s, and in the Ice Bowl against San Diego, it was -51 wind chill. And they interviewed Kenny Anderson the night before, and he says, well, it's a level playing field. Both teams have to play in it, so both teams will struggle. And he starts smiling and giggling, like, of course not. These beach kids are just going to get buried in this game, and they did. Kellen Winslow out of gas. But I digress. One more time, the game we're on, Patrick.
Yeah, of course. Pittsburgh, Buffalo, 9.5 right now at DraftKings.
Yes, so I think that Buffalo's flawed. All these premium teams are so flawed. I do think when I watch Pittsburgh, and I love having one observation that I noticed and nobody else noticed. I noticed that in a mud game against Baltimore that Warren was fumbling and couldn't be trusted, and they gave it to Najee. So now we're going to have another cold, crappy weather game. So I think if you're going to bet on the running backs for Pittsburgh, I would bet Najee Harris over, and I would bet Warren under because of that.
I would agree. I think Steve's point on the teaser here is a good one, Patrick. I think T.J. Watt, his concerns for getting banged up, and then this team offensively. In my estimation right now, they're going to have to be able to score 13 to 17 points to be able to cover this number. Can they do it? Is what you got to ask yourself if you're going to bet Pittsburgh.
Okay, 6 minutes, Steve. Hang in there. You get some chicken noodle soup. 147. Green Bay is at Dallas. DraftKings open Dallas 7 has been hit up to -7.5 with Dallas laying it.
Yeah, so I look at my power ratings. That's kind of my starting point. So Dallas is like 6.5 points better than an average team, and Green Bay is 1.5 better. So neutrals of 5, but Dallas is so good at home. I think we got to give Dallas 2 for home field. And I think we got to give Dallas a little bit more because they had a cupcake walk, and Green Bay needed that game like blood. And even though they dominated against the Bears, they're only up by 1.5, and the game was in the balance. So all the intangibles point to Dallas. I think we teased Dallas. Patrick, what could possibly go wrong with McCarthy at the helm, right?
Real quick question, Steve, to follow up on your point total at home in terms of 2 points for the home field advantage. Why has there been a downgrade from the standard 3 for teams at home now to 1.5 to 1 or 2, 1.5 or 1?
You know, it's a great question because I don't know why the home teams don't do as well. Yeah. I just know black box, like over the past 5 years, they've only done like 1.5 better. Yeah. And there's been theories about, you know, they always talk about the travel, and it's so much easier to travel back and forth across the country. But I really don't know why. I just know that home field isn't even worth 2 anymore.
Steve, the Rams at Detroit, Matthew Stafford's return. So DraftKings immediately opened Detroit 3.5. The Rams got hit. It got hit to 3, and then immediately back to the Lions -3.5, where it sits right now.
So I had the Rams. Notice how boring this is. My Rams, and I give out my power ratings. I tweet them every week. Rams are a 3. And Detroit's a 4.5. So 1.5 on a neutral, 1.5 for home field, and I get to 3 for Detroit. So once it goes through the 3 up to 3.5, I'll lean a little bit to a Rams team that probably has been undervalued all year long by quite a bit, actually.
This could be a fun matchup, Patrick. I think this is probably the second best game of the weekend to watch, but I think it's a tough one to call. I don't know where you guys come out early on this one.
Well, this one on Monday night, Steve, if you're still sick, I encourage you to sleep through Philly. Well, you'll be live betting. Philly at Tampa. So Philly's in a bad way, as we know. I don't know how you handicap kind of a spiral like this, but Philly open 2.5, Steve, have been bet up to that key number of 3. So Philly -3 at Tampa Bay.
I think you have to bet Tampa Bay. So, I mean, think about power ratings-wise. So Tampa's like the 8 of clubs. They're like the middle card on the deck. Nondescript, average team. I don't think many would argue with that. Some might say they're better. I'm worried Baker was limping around, so he might not be 100%. I'm not so sure Philly's more than like 1 point better than an average team right now. So if I got 2 teams that are comparable and I got the home team catching 3, that's an immediate take. I have to bet Tampa Bay.
Patrick, you said it best. Find something else to watch on Monday night unless you're live betting this game or unless you got action on it.
Okay, Steve, last one, and you go home. Monday night, we're into this one. Washington, Michigan National Championship game. It was 4.5 when we left on Friday. It was 5 when we started the show, Steve. Most shops are now showing Michigan laying 5.5.
Yeah, so it's a championship game similar to the Super Bowl, and I know Chris Felica talked about this already, but I've spoken about this for years. In a championship game, the recreational bettors love to bet the dog to win the game on the money line. That's just the way that they're programmed. So because of that, wait it out. If you like Michigan, I would strongly encourage you, play the money line on Michigan. You're probably going to get like a -190, I would imagine, right at post. If you like Washington, by contrast, it won't surprise me if you won't see the point spread inflate at some of the shops, especially in Vegas. You might get a 5.5 or even a 6 on Washington. Perfectly good middle. Taking 6, laying -190. Which one do I personally like better? I got to tell you, I kind of like both. Bold prediction, Washington plays nothing but close games, and they finally lose one of them.
I'll save your cap because I'm going to have you cap it in the next segment. Before we say goodbye, anything as far as the 56 in this matchup as far as the total Washington-Michigan, Steve?
The last 2 championship games, I think, have flown over, so I'd be careful, like, looking at an under in a championship game. I do want to, with all these contests, I do want to leave everyone with 1 point. be careful, and this is documented in Stewie Unger when he won 3 world championships. Don't go out and celebrate and piss away all your money after you win one of these championships. So we got 4 new millionaires in Vegas. That's fine. Go out, have a good time, go to Barry's and enjoy. But don't go and just blow $100,000 tipping everybody $100 here, there, everywhere, like this is always going to be there. So be very careful. If you gamble enough, you're going to have big scores over the course of your life. Guess what? You're going to hit those royal flushes. You need to put that money away to pay for the times where times aren't as good.
So I have a quick follow-up on the tipping part of it. Let's say you're the person that was the individual winner of the $2.3 million. Now, everybody's tipping and how they do it is different. What is just kind of the perceived expectation from people? Because I will tell you, it's a lot different if you live here than other places.
Yeah. So back when I won the $200,000 at Westgate, it was easy because I got a bonus for $10,000 for hitting 67% one year. So I was like, boom, that's the tip. That was easy to tip 5%. When you win $2.3 million, I think 5% is excessive that you don't have to tip that much. Not tipping at all is unacceptable as well. So I'm not going to tell anybody how to tip.
Sure.
But the hardworking people that run these contests, and think about it, you've got no rake at all. So at a minimum, just assume there was at a minimum, I'd say assume there's a 3% rake, and then you can tip 3% to your ticket writers at a minimum.
Last question. Benson and your buddy Derek Stevens at Circa. The Ravens, 49ers win a Super Bowl. One of those two, yes, -115, no is -115 on the way out.
Fascinating prop. So the math says I should bet the field, and my gut says bet Baltimore or San Fran. One of those two will indeed win.